Welcome to Passion. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Britt Ivy, and today we have with us Colonel Dave Dotterrer. Welcome, Dave.
Well, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming back on Passion.
We had a great time last time, and I'm sure we'll have a good time this time.
Great. Well, I'm excited to tell the audience what you've been up to with the House and Senate Republican caucuses as the budget coordinator. So can you tell our audience a little bit about what that job description entails, what it is you're doing now in Salem for us?
Well, what I'm doing right now is I'm working with the two Republican caucuses, both in the House and the Senate, working on making sure that that the budget is coordinated with requirements for the state. You need to start with, why do we have a state government, and what are the requirements to achieve outcomes that are necessary for the people of Oregon, and then apply the resources that the people of Oregon have given to their state government. Match those up. And that's not easy to do. It's a very, very complex political process, but it's also a strategic planning process. And I work with, again, just the Republican side of the two caucuses in those to work on that. But more specifically, I work day to day with Representative Dennis Richardson out of Central Point.
4th District.
4th District. He is one of the he's one of the co-chairs of the
Ways and Means.
Joint Ways and Means. And just for your viewers, Oregon has got a very, very unique and quite good way of doing their budget, which is they don't have separate budget committees for the House and the Senate. They have a joint committee, and there are co-chairs that that head that committee up. And so there's one from the Senate, and that's the majority party, so that's a Democrat. Well, in the last session, because the House was evenly divided, you had co-chairs. So you, instead of having two co-chairs this time, you had three, which was a very interesting dynamic, as anybody who's ever been in the middle of three people in a room, trying to get them to get together and everything. So it was a very interesting conversation. But I work with Dennis on that, and it's a great job. I love it.
Wonderful. Well, he is very well respected. I think first and foremost right now by Republicans and Democrats and anyone paying attention in the United States of America for having an ending balance, positive ending balance after coming through the budget process for Oregon. And he has been referred to as the Paul Ryan of the budget process for Oregon. Just amazing accomplishments. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to work for him and what he's been doing?
Well, he's a lawyer. He's very intelligent. I can tell you he is also, in spite of the, and I'm saying this as somebody who spent 27 years in the United States Marine Corps, he may be one of the hardest working people I've ever met. I mean, he really, you sometimes have to pull him back or else he'll just burn himself out. And so very hardworking. He also, one of the things I really like about him is he steps back from, of course he has his own set of beliefs and all, and so maybe people would not necessarily agree with that set of beliefs, but he lives those, and that's what his passion is, if you will. And also, when he looks at a problem, of course he looks through that lens, but he asks himself the question, what is really the right thing for the people of Oregon? Again, you will have different people who believe that there are different right things, but the point is he's looking at the bigger picture. He's a big picture guy. And the other thing that I can say without hesitation, there are 90 members of the Oregon legislature. There's no member there that knows the budget better than he does, that conceptually understands how that budget functions and what it means in the strategic sense. There might be one or two people who are equal to him, but there's nobody that exceeds him. And so he is well respected on both sides of the aisle as somebody who, when he comes to the table, has done his homework, and he speaks, and he represents he represents his position well. That's the best way to describe it. And so it's a fascinating piece for me as somebody who spent all my time in the executive branch of government, because that's what the Department of Defense is, that's what the military is, to now see it on the other side, because you have this other co-equal branch of government called the legislature, and it just functions differently. Okay. Anyways, that's the best way to describe working for Dennis.
Great. Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And like you, I understand he's a man of values and doesn't serve out of ego, but really loves the United States of America and serves for serving's sake as well.
He does.
As well.
You know,
almost like if not me, who?
That's correct. That's correct.
Right.
You know, I mean, we've had discussions before where he said, you know, Dave, we just need to go out and do this because this needs to be worked on.
Right.
We need to fix this. And well, you know, and sometimes you go, well, yeah, but that's not really in our job description. And you go, well, yeah, but nobody's fixing it. I don't see anybody stepping up and picking up the football. So I guess we're going to have to pick this football up. And you know, take for example his trips to China. He leads those trips to China. He's done that 10 times. Now,
10 delegations.
10 times
10
he's
times
made
he's
trips
been
to
a
China to better the economic ties between Oregon. He's doing this for Oregon. He's not doing this for the Rogue Valley. He's doing this for Oregon, and China, and this becoming an economic powerhouse and a market of 1.3 billion people, and to bring that together. That is not a legislative function. That's not what legislators do. That's not what you elect people like that to do. But his belief is that if you don't fix the economic issues in this state, we will not have the revenue to pay for the government we need. And one of the ways to do that is to increase trade with, gosh, 1.3 billion people.
Right.
I mean, are you
It's quite a
kidding me?
market.
That's right. It's a great
Gotta
market.
just look from
And
a
we've got-
marketing
and-
point of view.
And he'll tell you, the Chinese are paying attention to Oregon, and he's part of that. So those are the kinds of things that Dennis does that are just, again, it's just, there's a foot
Outside the box to get
outside
the
the
job
box.
done.
Absolutely.
That's
nicely
wonderful.
said. Nicely said.
Thank you. Well, I try. I really enjoy as well that in that market, I understand that he has created some concrete contracts, actual contracts with companies here in Oregon,
That's correct.
contracts with the Chinese. So he's created more jobs in Oregon already, just by an offshoot of networking and making them know we're safe, we're a safe place to be. And from what I understand, China is more aware of Oregon than any other state in the United States of America right now.
Well,
That
they're very well aware of Oregon. Just to give you a specific example, when he went on this he just came back from a trip to China, and he took representatives from 2 companies that do environmental planning and work, and that both companies came back with big contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts.
Well, hallelujah.
You know, I mean, you know, the first thing you got to do is you got to show up.
Exactly.
And these 2 companies showed up. They went there, and the Chinese looked at them and said, "Yeah, we'd like you to do that." And Dennis knows the buttons to push and the people to talk to in China. Of course, it's a different society, and they do things differently than we do. And these
But
2
still
companies walked away
friends.
with these 2 companies walked away with significant contracts.
Right.
And so you almost want to look at some of the other companies and say, so you want to go with us next time?
Right,
I mean, look what these guys did.
exactly.
All they did was they took a week out of their schedule and they ended up with
Exactly.
So anyways, that's
Because
the
friends
kind of
do
things he does.
business with friends.
That's
it's like
correct.
when you're in Silicon Valley, same thing. So why be afraid to go to China? Why be afraid to go to some of these other countries that have billions of people waiting to do business with someone that can serve their needs?
And Dennis understands, has made that connection between economic development and the welfare of the people of Oregon, and how do you pay for state government? If you don't have economic activity, you don't have jobs, and you're not paying taxes, and all these connections, and they're so important, and he understands that. So I believe that's why he has picked this up. And we'll just see where it goes. But I bet he keeps doing it because he loves it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see more contracts
Yeah.
come. And
Yeah.
as a California girl, I have to say I'm pretty proud to be part of Oregon right now. And Dennis is one big reason, and you as well, you're in there swinging as well, is a reason that we're not California upside down right now. I mean, he created an environment and engineered getting through the budget process with an ending balance remaining. I mean,
Yes.
that makes me very proud. I mean,
That
I'd
was-
love to see that applied throughout the whole country.
Oh, no,
'Cause
no,
then
it
we
really,
would be at
really
the
was.
mercy of other countries right now.
It was, having worked with him on that ending balance and the basic concept of how do we fund the government, and this idea that you don't appropriate all the money. You leave yourself a cushion. It strikes me as this isn't rocket science. This is very common sense. There's, people say, well, the budget is very difficult. Well, actually, the budget's not that difficult. It's a kind of
Spend less than you make.
Absolutely,
Income, outgo.
it really, it really at that level is not difficult. Now, when you get down into the budget lines and all that stuff, sure, it gets very complex. But the broad general concept of this is how much money we have, or we think we're going to have, and since we only think we're going to have this much money, and our track record is we always think we're going to have more money than we actually end up having, it doesn't strike me as a gigantic intellectual leap to say, well, maybe we shouldn't plan on spending it all.
Right,
And that's
maybe
really all we're doing.
increase
That's really all
cushion.
we did.
Exactly.
It's a very simple concept. But, that's not.
But applying it through the minutia and through the entire system that is used to spending every penny they can get their hands on, never thinking that our deficit would actually put the liberty of our country in jeopardy. I mean, to get in there and actually do it on a day-to-day basis, who wants to do that? And you guys are doing that.
It is hard. I can tell you that what I watched on the budget process was this governor was engaged with both the Republicans and the Democrats.
Wonderful.
Part of that co-governance piece, and he engaged with them, and he gets it. He understands. He may have different priorities. He may have some different political beliefs. Okay, but he gets the idea of we probably that I can work. This is what I need to do to work on the broad general budget ideas, and that's so important to be able to do that and have those discussions and pick up the phone and call the governor and say, look, John, we need to talk about this.
Right.
And I've been in the room when Dennis has done that. John, we
Excellent.
need to talk about
Right,
this.
right. Needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me with the presidential election coming up that when people talk about issues and changing ideas and education needs to be what's most important and this and that, and the whole list of what needs to be of uppermost importance for the next president, none of it matters if we can't pay our bills. None of it matters if we're underwater, upside down, and
Right.
the deficit is eating us alive, and somebody can call our debt at any time. So I don't really quite understand that. And the truth about state government borrowing, I think, is a mystery to some people, because many people think that a balanced budget means that we're not borrowing money. So can you clear that up?
Let me put it to you this way. Most people borrow money to buy a house, okay? And then when they work their budget up, they have a balanced budget in the sense that that mortgage payment, that debt service, is in the budget.
Correct.
And they can meet those payments. Hopefully people do that. Some people obviously haven't in the last few years, but hopefully most people will do that. So you could say that person has a balanced budget, but in truth, they have this big debt called a house. Most of us can't go out and buy a house with cash. We don't have that much money. Or you might have to do that with an automobile. Well, the state does the same thing. When the state goes out and borrows, like in this last budget session, the state went out and borrowed almost $1 billion. Okay, so when you look at a budget of $58 billion,
From the federal government.
from all sources.
From all sources.
From all sources.
Okay.
That's the total
Okay.
budget, about $58 billion.
Okay.
About $1 billion of that is state borrowing of
Okay.
some kind.
Thank you.
Okay? Now, the point though is that then when the credit card bill comes due and you have to pay the mortgage payment or you have to pay the credit card due, we have money in the budget to make the payments. But that doesn't mean that your state government isn't isn't spending, isn't borrowing money. It is borrowing money.
Got it. Okay.
So it's borrowing. And so part of the problem, and one of the things that we worked on and we intend to work on in the future, is that we need to remember that when you put something on your credit card, what you've done is you've said to the people of Oregon, those are 20-year, 30-year bonds. What you've said is for the next 20, 30 years, you've got a contract and you've got to make those bond payments. To give you an example, lottery resources come into the state.
Okay.
For every dollar of lottery resources that come into this state or that are paid, that go into the budget, 20 cents of it, more than 20 cents of it, goes to debt service, right off the top.
Right
So
off
in
the
other
top.
words, if a dollar comes in from lottery, and you say, oh, we got $1 to spend on schools, or we got $1 to spend on
No,
state
you have
police,
80 cents.
You got 80
if
cents.
you're lucky.
Yeah,
That's before everything else is taken out.
Yeah, exactly. Because you got to pay debt first. So if that's what you're doing, then is that the best way? We're asking the question, is that the best way to run our budget? Or would it be better to do a little more pay-as-you-go? Hey, great discussions, but again, you can't just keep running up your credit card,
Right.
and then because, like I say, you've now signed a bond contract, and the people of Oregon got to pay that off. So, anyways, we've taken a hard look at that.
And what do those people do that can't pay it off? And it's 10, then they owe 20, then they owe $30,000, and then they declare bankruptcy.
Well, that's true.
So
Now,
we don't want to get in a
we
situation
don't want to get into that.
anything like that.
No,
And
but I will say this.
Yes.
That your state has placed a cap on a percentage of the budget, 5% of the budget. No more than 5% of the budget can go to debt service.
No more than 5%?
No more than 5%.
That is pretty unique. I know other states that don't have that.
Yeah, they don't, and California certainly doesn't. But that's a good management piece.
It's a wonderful management
It's a wonderful management. It absolutely is. Now, you heard me say the 20% on the that's overall 5%. It doesn't mean that on lottery funds, for example, you wouldn't go over 5%. For example, that piece of the budget. But anyway.
I see.
So no, there's a lot of prudent things being done. It's not all a bad news story.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, what about revenue volatility?
Well, interestingly, I read an article about 2 weeks ago by an economist from Oregon State University, in which he made a very profound statement that I very believe is true. Oregon does not have a revenue volatility problem. Oregon has a fiscal volatility problem, and that is that, look, economies go up and economies go down. That's just the way the world works.
That's
so
correct.
that means that your revenue as a state is going to go up and it's going to go down. I don't care whether you have what different kinds of taxes you have or whatever you have. It's just it's life. You know, we deal with that in our own personal life. Government does that. The problem is that there's too many people in government, I believe, who have this idea that the revenue line should be some kind of a straight line, and it isn't. It's this. That's the way the world works. Well, the problem is your revenue line's going like this, and your spending line's going like this.
Right.
It's a straight line.
Right.
Well, guess what? They don't always match up. So sometimes you're above the line and sometimes you're below the line.
Right.
The answer is not trying to fix this wave, because you never will. The answer is fill in the hole when you got the excess. That's the way. That's the way you do it.
Well, how about this? How about this? How about the spending? Instead of going like this, we have a contest to see who can do this, and whoever saves the most penny, your salary doubles. I like
Well,
that.
that works. But you know, this idea of the rainy day fund, and there's some great ideas out there how to fix the rainy day fund. So, and I don't think we really have time to go into those today. But I think there's another interesting comment that I think the viewers should which to me is very important. And this was in the co-governance piece, where you have a Democratic governor and you got the Republicans, and they're working on the budget. I sit down occasionally with the governor's budget director, and we have coffee together. And one time, about a couple of months ago, he said he went over to the whiteboard pulls out a pen, draws a chart, and he made the comment. He said, "You know, Dave, this is what we estimate the." I'm going to do it like this. This is what we estimate the revenue is going to look like. We're expecting revenue to go up a little bit.
Okay.
It's an uphill. Okay, it's not.
Okay.
It's going up. Okay. The problem is the spending was going up faster. Okay,
That is a
and
problem.
it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And he said, because of what the last legislature did, you moved the spending line down. You changed the slope of it, just what you're talking about. Because
Okay.
you did the same thing with your hands. Remember,
Right,
you just
right.
now, you just went like this.
That's
And
correct.
the answer is, when you're dealing with a fiscal problem, you need to move that spending line down. Stop making promises you can't keep in the future. Stop borrowing money because
Yeah.
you have to pay the debt.
Plug
Those
up the
kind-
loose cannons.
Absolutely. And so I thought that was significant for the budget director to say that. And the point is that the spending line, Dennis and I don't believe it's in the right place yet, but it's moving in the right direction. And my view is, sometimes that's about the best you can do. Just get it moving in the right direction, get the
Praise
momentum
God.
going. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
so anyways, I thought that was a pretty significant statement by the budget guy, because that made me really feel good. Because if he'd said it's going in the other way, I'd have
Right.
gone, oh my goodness, I thought we were working on this and
Right.
fixing this, and we're not. But
And what an honor he sat down and said that to you. He knows that there is a concern in your heart for let's put some fiscal responsibility in
Right.
place here and
Right.
really take control of what's happening in our state.
That's right. That's right. Well, and
So thank you from a
well,
citizen.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, we've got some very, very definite things that are functions of government that need to be done, and we absolutely need the adequate resources. Now, we can all debate and argue over what those might be, but we all
But why
understand
waste
that,
the time?
that we understand that there are some very vulnerable, needy people who really need these government services. And the only way you're going to pay for them into the future is to get your fiscal house in order. You've got to have the resources to do that, or we are going to have people start falling through the cracks. So,
Well, it's good to know you keep all that in mind as well, and those people in all different levels of society, because that's what it's about when you're a caretaker. I wanted to talk a little bit about Measure 84, but I don't know if we have time. We have about 3 or 4 minutes,
Yeah.
so
yeah, let's,
we can table that
we
one.
can table that
We
one,
can
yeah, I
table
think,
that
yeah.
one. What do you think our fundamental issues are now facing the Oregon state budget, besides
Well,
what we spoke about?
We need to. This governor has put together a 10-year strategic plan in which he's looking at what are the outcomes that we need over the next 10 years.
I heard about that.
And it's a great document, and we can debate over whether or not you agree with what's in that document at the specifics. But the point is, that's new.
That's an idea that might work.
It's a great idea. Now, you might ask yourself the question, why did it take us 150 years to get to this? Because most corporations have been doing this for years, or most other organizations have been doing this.
Well,
But
obviously the right brains are around
Right.
him now, that it's stimulating
Right.
some solution thinking.
And so we're working on that, and I think that's going to help us. We're going to need to spend some time on that. We really are going to need to get a handle on personnel costs. Because even the local school districts will tell you that that's an issue. PERS is certainly going to be an issue. We need to make sure we have an adequate system, because we have to honor the promises we've made to people who are in that system. But at the same time, we need to meet the needs. So we're going to have to. I think that's a huge challenge.
That
one
is
gonna be-
wonderfully well put.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you. Well, I
Yeah.
can't wait till you get elected at some point. I'm just going to stand by and see whatever it is that you're going to be serving at and be part of your cheerleading squad. So
Thank you.
it sounds like not only our governor, but both sides of the aisle are working together, and a lot of good things are happening right now.
My experience, of course, I've never seen, whether one side or the other was in charge, but I feel very fortunate to have seen the co-governance model work. It was fun to watch that.
That's
and
amazing.
gratifying. So.
Well, to have the House equally divided, that was a historic event
Yes,
in
it was.
Oregon.
It was. You know,
That's
and
really
and
amazing.
and there were a lot of people who were very skeptical. Oh, you can't make this work. Well, they did make it work, and that
Yeah.
that says a lot about both sides.
Yeah.
And so
What's wrong with
I was trying to-
cooperation, you know?
Yeah, that's
We
right,
talked
that's
about
right.
that on Sesame Street.
Yeah, well, let me assure you, they had their debates, they had their differences of opinion,
Right.
but at the end of the day, they worked through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of good friends right now serving as well, and I'm sure I'll see you and your lovely wife, Carrie, soon. So
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on Passion.
You betcha. Glad to be here.
And we've got about 1 minute to wrap up here.
Okay.
So I just thank you so much, and I'm hoping that next time you come on, you will also bring your cohort, Dennis Richardson, and we can all have a lively debate
Well,
here
I
on
think,
Passion.
you know,
I was
I know
excited he was coming this morning and had a last minute.
yeah, he did,
Emergency.
and he had, I know he wants to come on and talk, and I know that he, you know, he'll give you a different slant than I do. Remember, we're looking at things through a different
Right.
way, and although he and I are very close together from a governance model, is probably the best way to describe it. You know, he has different world, he has different experiences.
Yep.
You know, I come at this from being a Marine officer, and he says he comes at it from being a lawyer. So,
Perfect.
yeah,
Good blend.
yes, it is.
Well, thank you so much
You
for
betcha.
coming on
You betcha.
Passion. Thank you so much.
We really enjoyed it.
All right, Mr. Dotterrer. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Passion. It's been a fun and lively conversation, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.